Don't worry. Okay.
Okay, good night. Thank you so much for joining us. We have today an interesting interview regarding cross-cultural pedagogy around the world and a deep look at the diversity and interaction of cultures across the globe. Welcome to this interview regarding cross-cultural pedagogy. Today, we are going to highlight the importance of multiculturality globally. We will discuss how diverse cultural perspectives enrich educational practices and foster inclusivity in learning environments. To do that, we have an expert on multiculturality. So thank you so much for being here with us. Okay, so please talk about yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much for receiving me. I think it's a pleasure to be here. Prof. Luis actually gave an invitation. I think that was yesterday. Or no, that was last Friday, I guess. Yeah. Or Saturday, right?
Okay, thank you for
Well,
your time.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Okay, that's good.
So, well, my name is Anthony. My last name is Mauli, and I'm from Ghana in Africa. I've been living in Colombia for the past 10 years, and I actually came here through intercultural exchange program with Sena. So I actually worked there for 2 years, and then after that, I started working with Mariana University back in 2018. And from that time till now, I've been working with different organizations like Profesores Extranjeros and British Council. I've worked with some academies also as well as private classes. So yeah, I've had extensive experience in the teaching industry. However, that's not my actual profession. I'm a mechanical engineer. I just have like love and passion for languages. So yeah, basically that's about me.
Oh,
Thank
it's a
you.
pleasure. It's a pleasure to hear that about your experience. Thanks a lot. Please,
Appreciate it.
today you are gonna help us, we as master students, to
Yeah,
emphasize the importance of cultural competence and inclusive teaching practices. So, in this section, we are gonna have some provocative questions for you that will
yeah,
enhance our understanding of multiculturality and its
yeah.
impact on education. This question will direct our conversation and elicit valuable insight from you. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Uh, Professor Anthony Mawuli, thank you for your participation this time.
I
And
appreciate it.
my name, as you know, is Javier Narvaez.
Yeah,
So I have the first question to you. Okay.
yeah.
So tell us, in your experience, how does African bilingualism or multilingualism influence the students' motivation and learning of a new language?
Well, that's a really deep question, actually. Um, Talking about motivation, I think it's one of the fundamental tools we need in every language classroom as teachers. And we as African and like my country, Ghana, we're very multilingual because we have about 50 plus languages in the country, which means if you move from different departments, you have to learn the language and also try to understand them because in my country, we know language as an identity. So let's assume you are from Nariño and then you're going to study in Cali, for instance. When you get to Cali, for you to feel culturally identified, you have to learn the language over there. English is general in all the country, but you have to try to learn the native language over there in that region. So, for example, Nariñenses have their own language. Caleños have their own language, like Paisas have their own language. So, like every department has like something different, which gives them the identity. So, if you move to that area and you want to be recognized as part of them, you need to learn the language. And because of that, it has taught us to have that adaptability. and flexibility to easily forget about, not like forget about our culture, but easily try to take on new cultures. And at the same time, we understand language is not just a medium of communication, but it's also like identity issues. So for you to feel identified in a community, you have to learn to speak the language they speak, because that is the only thing that can let you feel closer to them. If, for example, let's say I come to Nariño and I've been here for almost 10 years and I couldn't speak Spanish. Whenever I get close to anyone and I try to speak English, even though they might admire me that I'm speaking a second language they don't understand, behind like cognitive aspects, they might feel like, nah, this guy is not really related to us, it's not close to us because he can't speak Spanish. But the moment I switch from English to speaking Spanish, it creates a kind of like bridge, like a connection between you and me. And that is what language actually gives like anyone at all. So in the African community, we understand multilingualism actually help us to have that natural flexibility and adaptation in any area that we go. And at the same time, we try to see language as identity. And that gives us motivation to learn whatever language we might like try to do. And if sometimes it's not just the positive aspect, sometimes you might have like a negative aspect of multilingualism, which is like cross-coding, for example, where you'll be using one language and all of a sudden you switch to the next one. And you notice like the grammar, like the intonation, like the accents, everything changes at the same time. And when that happens, it can cause a lot of confusion sometimes. But I think the positive side of that is it helps us to kind of be aware of our environment, what we are doing, and also helps us to be able to have that mentality of problem solving. And that's one positive aspect of like the switching of languages. So yeah, in general, I think adaptation and understanding that language creates bridge and connection among different cultures is what gives us motivation.
Okay, Professor. So, Professor Fredy and Professor Sandra, here we can note that multilingualism is a powerful instrument for cultivating resilience and
Right.
a more comprehensive global perspective.
Correct.
Thank you, teacher, and no, Professor Tony.
I appreciate it. Thank you too.
Okay, let's continue with the question number 2.
Okay.
Professor Anthony, how can educational policies and community-based initiatives work together to strengthen identity and intercultural education for minority and indigenous students in Colombia?
I kind of love this question because I feel like I've had a first-hand experience with this situation, because I worked once in Ipiales for 1 year, and over there I had students from different municipalities around Ipiales with those Inga communities and so forth. And whenever they come to class and they see a native, like a foreigner speaking English, they develop the interest of trying to learn. But at the same time, you can feel the kind of like, they don't really want to get connected so much because they feel like they have some kind of abundance and inferiority complex. Why am I saying that? I have another experience in Milena. I think that was like 2 semesters ago. So I was teaching a B1 course, and there was this student from the Inga community. I think her name was Stefania. So what happens was, at the beginning of the course, I noticed she didn't have any interest in learning English. And what I do is I observe my students so much. I always make sure like I know all my students. By just looking at them, I know what is going on in their mind, like what they are thinking about and what they are feeling. So after one class, I actually got close to her. I was like, Steph, like, what happened? ¿Qué te pasó? And she was like, Profe, a mí me da mucho rabia. Like, she told me like, I don't like English. I hate English. I was like, Steph, bueno, cuéntame, ¿qué pasó? she was a bit scared because she felt I might kind of be aggressive on her that she has to study English and stuff. I was like, no, cuéntame, like, ¿qué te pasó? La profe, mira, sorry for the Spanish anyway. She was
Yeah,
like,
it's intercultural.
Yes.
Multilingual. Multilingual.
she was like, mira, profe, yo soy la comunidad de Inga, pero me siento como si nosotros, nadie nos quiere. Nosotros tenemos nuestros idiomas, pero cuando hablamos como idiomas de Inga, todo el mundo nos rechaza. Y para mí me da rabia que nos está enforzando para aprender otro como cultura que nosotros no nos importa. See, and when she mentioned that, it hit me a lot because I also came from a cultural background where we had the British as our colonial masters, right? So what that means is for our ancestors, they believe that those colonial masters actually torture us and try to destroy our culture, including our language. And we tried so hard, we fought so hard to gain independence. And after independence, now the society and the country is forcing us to what? Learn the language of our colonial masters. So in the back of most of our ancestors, they believe learning those language is kind of like disrespecting our own culture and our own language. And as a result, we develop some kind of resistance towards learning English or learning any other language. So talking about policy, what happens to my country? My leaders understood this. So in policy making and educational policy, for example, they made it compulsory for every primary school and high school to introduce traditional languages into our curriculum. So if you come to Nariño, for example, there's a high possibility all the public schools and private schools have one indigenous language in our curriculum that we learn beside English. So by so doing, we understand that they are not just forcing us to what? Learn the language, but they are trying to help us to bridge the gap between our culture and also the world. So I think when it comes to policy, one thing Colombian can actually do is try to bridge that gap between the native languages and then the most powerful language like English and Spanish. For example, introducing maybe one Inga language into the curriculum, because I noticed Colombia has about 75 plus indigenous languages. However, none of them is respected. And most of the students that we have in the universities, we have about 30% coming from those indigenous communities. And they're here right now, we're forcing them to what? Learn English. And for them, learning English is kind of like putting them back to slavery, like forcing them to do something they don't want to do. So one way of doing that is by bringing interculturality between those indigenous people and then English. By so doing, we're trying to kind of create some community initiatives where we bring local leaders, like cultural leaders, like families, like all included in students' identity, to give them that kind of respect they want. Because when they see their leaders participating in intercultural exchange like that, it gives them motivation. Oh, if my dad is doing that, or if my chief or my leader is doing that, it means it's something positive. Because charity begins at home. All the resistance these students are facing right now comes from the home, which is their leaders telling them, oye, ustedes no tienen que dejar su cultura, tienen que respetar, no tienen que dejar que nadie te enfoza para como estudiar algo que no te pertenezca. And that's the problem. And one other thing I believe is also like integration. So I think school should balance global competence like English, Spanish proficiency with cultural pride, trying to create some kind of innovations to bring those communities together, to let them notice that their culture is not abandoned, but it's actually respected. And by giving them identity, is to give them motivation to what? Try to integrate into this language learning process. That's my thought about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anthony. Thank you for your perspective and sharing your wonderful experience like as a teacher in this community. And well, it's wonderful.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. So we are going to move on to the last question regarding the big challenges that we have in multicultural education. My question is, what do you see as the biggest educational challenges schools face today in increasingly multicultural and intercultural context? Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Well, this is also one of the problems we have as language teachers or language centers, for example. And I will mention few problems, but one of the most important is equity of access. When I mention that, it's about, we have many schools, for example, who lack resources to support like all languages, like teachers, materials, trainings. We don't have all these resources to help us to build the environment for our students to feel safe and like confident to learn. And I think one other challenge we have is teacher preparation. So we have educators are often not trained in intercultural pedagogy or sometimes how to handle diverse classrooms. We know professionally how to teach, but I think sometimes we forget that language is culture. Language is not mathematics. Language is not science. It's not physics. It's culture. So for you to teach the language means first you have to understand what the culture is and how you can immerse your students into the culture. But I think more often we as teachers, we forget that because of the educational context and the formality of it, that we focus on just giving the students like what's in the book, what we've prepared for them, without letting them also assimilate what we are trying to give them and letting them feel the cultural aspect of them. Right now, I speak Spanish. And if I compare my Spanish to someone who learned Spanish from different country, there is a big difference because I am able to understand the context of the language. I'm able to know how to use the language and how to appreciate the language more than someone who learned the language from like outside Spanish region. And that tells you a lot about the importance of culture of language. And the other problem I notice about this area is about rates of assimilation. So you notice schools may push for dominant global languages while undervaluing minority languages like the Yinga stuff I was telling you right now. So the whole point is trying to find a balance between like those global languages and then our minority languages to bridge the gap between the two, because at the end of the day, what we are doing is to reinforce conversation, reinforce like communication, connect like each community to the other, because the world is becoming like a global village. And one way of doing that is through a common language. But we can't do that common language and forget where we come from. Always we need to remember our roots, like our origin. If we forget our origin means we are lost completely. So the point is try to enforce those global language, but at the same time try to remember our identity. And I think that's what we can do to reinforce this situation. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for answering this interesting question. And we can see that we have a big responsibility as master students to face with these challenges that you mentioned. And we have to create different research projects to attend the needs that you just mentioned. Thanks a lot.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as a conclusion, I would say that it has been a thoughtful and interesting meeting. And also we can create a positive learning environments. And I would say that we can design educational environments that celebrate diversity and promote mutual understanding, which is vital for the future of global citizenship.
That's true. That's true.
Thank you so much for your engagement, for your time. We just want to say that we really appreciate your participation in this discussion or this interview on multiculturality and its significance in education. Your insights and interests contribute to a greater understanding of diverse perspectives. Thank you so much again,
I really
Anthony,
appreciate
and
it.
well, thanks, my Mr. Fredy and Mr. Javier. We share different ideas and we learn a lot. So now we have to be very open-minded to attend all your ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really
That's,
appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Profe,
that's
thank
Thank
you very
you,
much for the
Professor
invitation.
that's all.
Fredy, for this insightful interview.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. Okay, thank you, and we'll see you in another opportunity.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you, guys, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank
That's
you a
great.
Bye-bye.
lot.
Ciao,
Bye-bye.
ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.